Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host Faizan Akri with a prayer. May Allah keep you all safe, healthy and blessed. And may Allah hasten the appearance of Imam of our time and make us true companion of our Imam, inshallah. Today in MERI PECHCHAN we will be discussing the Gaza genocide and the role of Islamic states around the globe and the role of other countries in that incident and in that catastrophe which is going on in Gaza and the situations like that. So there will be two perspectives in that. One is how things are happening now and what is the current situation, and one is how social norms are directing us. What kind of age and time and period we are living in, and what kind of values we as human being, no matter which society we belong to, we are reflecting. So we will be discussing that in depth with our honorable panel of guests, and I'll move on to them. And we do have Dr. Syed Inayatullah Indarabi with us, and Syed Mohsin Abbas. And thank you so much for joining in today in our show. It's really honor to have you both on the show. Thank you so much. First of all, I'll move on to the updates first, and then I'll move on to Dr. Sab, and we'll see some academic perspective of the whole situation as well. So, Mohsin bhai, how would you describe the current situation at the moment, which is going on in Gaza, and what are the most important things we really need to consider at this time?
Well, the genocide continues, the ethnic cleansing continues, the efforts by Israel to really violate every humanitarian and civilized rule that we might think of in morality continues. There's no change in terms of the Israeli stance. The only thing that has slightly changed is that they've had a bloody nose. Possibly 1,000 or so military vehicles have been knocked out, and along with that you can just only guess the number of Israelis that have been actually killed. The IDF, or rather the IOF, the Israeli occupation force, has suffered in terms of losses. But what we do know is that 12,500 Israeli soldiers have been declared disabled. So the number of injured soldiers that Israel has officially recognized is 12,500, all hit in military actions. That just gives you the scale of the success of the defense of Gaza in the conventional sense. On the other side, we can see that Israel has achieved 23,000 plus, murderous killing of innocent civilians, children and women in particular, and flattened most of the northern part of Gaza. That is Israel's achievement, a genocidal achievement. On the other hand, we see in a conventional military engagement that the Palestinian resistance has stood up exceedingly well. We can also see that Lebanon, or the south of Lebanon, is getting hotter by the day. The targeted killings, assassinations, the extrajudicial killing, of course, of a Lebanese resistance commander, Hezbollah commander, also, of course, of the Palestinian, the chief Palestinian leader in Lebanon, Sheikh Haruri. Add to that, of course, the extrajudicial assassination of Sayyid Razi Musavi, the IRGC commander in Syria, who was killed. Add it, of course, to the bombing in Kerman, where hundreds of people lost their lives, and even more actually have been injured in Iran by the ISIS proxy Anglo-Zionist imperialist ISIS terrorists. These are some of the main highlights which have really shown that Israel, because it's losing in Gaza, because it's not achieving the destruction of the tunnels, it's not achieving the total dismantlement of Hamas, it's not able to achieve an outright victory over a short period of time, they've now started distracting for the sake of media publicity and propaganda, cheap media publicity. They've started targeting individual high-profile resistance leaders in order to give their public the sense that they are achieving something. So their achievements are killing children and women, and now targeting foreign countries, sovereign nations, with destruction in their civilian areas. This is Israel's achievement. What we've seen also is, in response, Hezbollah has launched at least 600, well, I monitored it about 2 days ago, 670 operations were carried out by Hezbollah on the borders of occupied Lebanon, in also occupied Palestine, in both territories. They've been hitting very, very strategically military targets. Again, not civilian targets, military targets, and very successfully. Again, Israel's suffered so many losses that perhaps that's one of the reasons they panicked into targeting a commander of the Lebanese resistance force. But they are also quite clearly trying to agitate for the direct involvement of America by expanding regionally their reach, by attacking these people living in ostensibly nations which aren't at war with them. They're exactly aiming to provoke a response from the Islamic Republic of Iran, particularly. They want to draw the Islamic Republic directly into a head-on war so that they can get the Americans to come in with their forces, land their troops, ideally in Israel, and be able to gain that direct financial support. The trouble is the Americans can't afford it. They've been pumping money into Ukraine, and they've already virtually they're getting themselves into greater and greater debt. They now also don't necessarily have the operational ability to be able to come into the Middle East and land their troops and achieve the kind of success that Israel would want them to, because Israel has known for some time that they no longer have the military ascendancy to the extent where they can completely negate those who they've oppressed for so many years. So that fear has been rumbling, and the right-wing extremist what I'd call Jewish fascist or Zionist fascist or whatever, the crypto-fascist leaders and indeed civilians of most of Israel, who all support this war, by the way, that they are in a desperate mode. They understand that they have what they've done. They understand that they've created absolute hatred for themselves. They understand that they've developed a resistance by their actions, and they understand that they are living a lie by occupying the land of a people who have been dispossessed for over 7 decades now. So all of that is coming home to roost. I see that, and what they see, and they see the end of Israel as we know it, the occupation of Israel. They see that very clearly. Imam Khamenei sees it very clearly. The resistance sees it very clearly. The Americans see it very clearly. The Americans, though, have to consider they spend over $4 or $5 billion per annum already to sustain this illegal entity. Are they prepared to bankrupt themselves by going to war and supporting Israel to the scale where not only they get body bags coming home by the hundreds, as well as losing more and more money? And of course, with elections coming up, is Biden willing to do this? Is he in the mood for being able to sustain that kind of loss? All of these are questions that we answered very shortly. But overall, that's the state of play. The final thing that I've missed, of course, is that for the first time, Israel has genuinely been taken to task in the ICJ for its genocidal actions. And today, where literally as we speak, the South Africans have made a petition. They put in an application and begun the proceedings against Israel for genocidal actions under Article 2. They've pushed ahead with bringing Israel to book. The implications of that are nothing. That the minimum that will happen is that the ICJ will have to prove that it's not a puppet organization, as the UN it itself is on trial. The institutions of the West that they created for international law and order are on trial as well. And the fact that the petition has been made puts the ICJ, for me, on trial to see what they do. And even if they find that Israel is genocidal, has committed a violation of the rules on genocide, then we have to see what can that court do? Can they implement anything? Can Israel be brought to task? Can they can they make Israel respect the international law, which is every international law which is violated over the last 7 decades? Can they guarantee that such genocides won't happen again, won't be committed by Israel? Have they any ability to be able to implement the rules and the laws that they have? If they can't do any of this, then we have to question what's the point of these courts if they have no implementation power, if there's no global, international, military or political or financial costs to a genocidal regime. What's the point in these courts? So I think that the minimum that will have to be achieved is that each one of the people who has committed the genocide has to be brought to trial. They have to be prosecuted. They have to be, of course, be given the opportunity to give their defense. But at the end, if they're found guilty, they must suffer the consequences, as well as, of course, Israel being boycotted and censored if it doesn't comply with whatever rulings come out. This is a big thing. It's not. It's along with the awakening that we see on the ground, the social media storm and the protests around the world and the awakening amongst peoples and their conscience. Along with that, we're seeing this. This kind of judicial action, which would also play out in front of people in real time, as with the killing of innocent children. All of this will impact the conversation we're going to have, hopefully, which is to do with the Arab and the Muslim countries, which have been absolutely complicit and also ought to be in the International Criminal Justice Court, standing as aiders and abettors. The Saudis, the Bahrainis, the United Arab Emirates, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Turks, all of them should be sitting with Israel on trial, of course, and with their granddaddy and their grandmother of Britain and America. They should also be sitting there under trial, not just Israel. This is a complicit act of genocide in which many of these nations, Anglo-Zionist, imperialist, allied nations, have all taken part in to one extent or another.
Thank you so much for updates, Musin bhai. Dr. Sahab, I would like to ask you something related. Like, obviously, you are a researcher as well as you think very deeply regarding different things. So how do you see, when we look upon the past 40, 50, 60 years or the past century up till now, we see lots of bloodshed. There is if we talk about Myanmar, if we talk about Kashmir, if we talk about even in Palestine and in Serbia, so we have seen so many atrocities and bloodshed in this century. How come in this 21st century this kind of thing is happening and we all are watching and no one is able to stop it? Like we have seen in Iraq, we have seen in Libya, we have seen how destruction has taken place previously. So we haven't learned any lesson so far that we could, as a common people around the globe, stop it. Like if pay is given less to in a factory or in a workplace, people go on strike and stop working, and they bring the company owners to accept their demands as something like that. So why this kind of thing can't take place now for the people of Gaza? Because these are not just the numbers, as we are listening continuously this thing. They are human beings who have equal right to live on this planet Earth, and they do have, this is so much painful to see all that. So how do you see the academically from academic perspective, what social norms are prevailing around the globe, and what kind of reflection of those social norms we are seeing at the moment in this world?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. See, I will come to what you have asked me, but first let me what Mohsen has said and sort of connected to that. Let me give you a perspective. the perspective is that what is going on in Gaza, Israel versus Gaza, we have to see it in if you call it spheres or if you call it levels, but there's a primary level, a primary sphere, and then there are secondary and tertiary or whatever whatever number it comes to. And in these different levels, the problem, that is the Israel-Gaza issue, it is framed in different ways. In the secondary, tertiary, or whichever level, it is basically it's from the discussion, the narrative. It is framed in terms of Palestinian independence, Israel's atrocities, Palestinian resistance, Palestinian homeland, and all this. And it evokes a lot of support globally and at the level of people, even at the level of governments, so many Muslim, non-Muslim governments, it has a very wide support. People support the Palestinian cause, and some people support now it should be two states, some people do not, but whatever, as to the issue of Palestine having their home and having their independence, it gets it has a widespread support among people, among governments, everywhere. This is what I call a secondary level. I mean, if I sit down to analyze it further, I might be able to subdivide it into further levels. But for now, let's keep it secondary level. But the primary level is something which is not very much discussed, but which is the primary means the main level. The main level is it's a war between the status quo of the world, the Western arrogance, as Imam Khomeini used to call it. It is the war between the arrogance and the newly emerging expression of Islam, the Husseini, the Ahl Bayt version of Islam. It is the war between that. It's the war between establishing justice and fairness in the world versus the established hegemonies, versus the established imperialist, colonial, and neo-colonial, whatever name you give it. I mean, people have called it colonial, post-colonial, neo-colonial. And when we talk of these things, we think we are talking of different things, but it's basically one thing. It is basically the dominance of the Western arrogance. It is basically the dominance of the arrogant powers, which has taken different forms. It was a pure imperialistic. Britain had an empire, British Empire. Then it's not an empire, but whatever it is, whatever forms it has, the essence is the dominance and the hegemony, and not letting people live as they want to live. So that is the essence, and that was entrenched in the world for the last 400-500 years, and a proper response has come up through the Islamic Revolution of Iran, and that movement, the Islamic Revolutionary movement, the Nazat Khomeini, as we love to call it, it is that versus the world arrogance at the primary level. Now, as I told you, and as I WhatsApped this on the groups also, that the British Foreign Secretary, he has his interview, and that was his first interview. He made the primary level very clear. He very clearly spoke about it. He said, the real thing is Iran. You are wandering from here, there, Gaza, Qatar, Turkey. Real thing is Iran. Stop it. So my assessment is that in the past, after that interview, my assessment is that there has been a change in Israel's methods also. Israel has been making selective, very targeted killings. And those killings which really mean to us, they are a damage to us. I mean, damage you can always build new things, but uh, there are things which really cause damage. These are the selective assassinations which Israel has done from in the recent times. That shows that the attention has gone to the primary level. And in the primary level, let me tell you, unlike the, let me call non-primary, secondary, tertiary levels, unlike those levels, the support on the primary level is not widespread. It is the same thing as it was when Iraq invaded Iran. On one side, it was Iran and Iran alone. Let me emphasize it. Iran alone. On one side, it was Iran. On the other side, it was the whole world. And after the war came to end, we have then come to know. It was then found out. We came to know the facts and figures that who did what, who assisted in chemical bombs, who assisted in this was clear. The whole world on one side and Iran on the other, and that's why if you meet people in Iran, if you meet concerned people in Iran, if you meet people who are genuinely concerned and who are genuinely a part of the transformation, a part of the Nazat Khomeini, they will tell you that that war of Iraq-Iran, that war has taught them what they did not know. It has taught them a lot. And you can see the brilliant, excellent politics of Iran for the last 40 over years. That takes that as input. It has learned from that. It has learned that how the world can be manipulated. I mean, if you want to do something, you may do it in it's not possible that in one go you will make all the people your friends. What happened and what happened at that time also, and what happens now also, the enemies, the West, they can bring some people on their side, but not all people. But at the primary level, it is possible for them to bring most of the people. I mean, that will explain what happened in Kerman. What happened in Kerman is again very significant. Support is coming from somewhere which was not there before. As I said, I think in your program also, at this time, the resistance movement in the region had shown its power and its biting ability. So the regimes, Saudi regime and Egypt and Jordan, the surrounding ones, their they had their options had become limited. They could not do which otherwise they would like to do. We saw that Rafah border was not opened immediately. And it was actually Israel aimed at it, that they should empty Gaza, they should occupy Gaza, but this has not been happening so far because of the resistance movement exercising its influence over the neighborhood. So this was already happening, but you can see that if America, if they want to deal it at the primary level, it is going to be a further tough fight. And the British Defense Secretary has already said that we have the option of hitting at Yemen, Houthis, because Houthis have opened a new field of combat. And I will conclude it, but sorry, actually I did not answer the question you had asked me, but I will answer that. But let me conclude it for now that I won't say that we are winning or they are winning. I'm only saying, and I'm saying this with all my with all my I'm fully sure about it. What I'm saying is that this is a very consequential fight. It is a fight, it is a war leading to consequences. It's a real combat. If they damage us, we damage them. But the real combat, you can always look at the ongoing war. As long as both are committed, it's a real war. Now, as Imam Khamenei rightly pointed out, that U.S. Secretary of State going here and there, going to so many countries, it shows that there is something they want to fix. There is something they are worried about. There is something that they should take steps to fix, and that's why he has come to so many countries and Arab countries, and I can understand what they are doing. They are basically winning the support of the regional powers, and outside that also, to get their support in dealing with this conflict at the primary level. How can we get rid of Iran? They are basically doing that. And this defense secretary said that they have talked to the governments in the region, and all of them agree that we should put a stop on Houthi activities. We should ensure the peace in sea, peace in the Red Sea. So now we have to. As I said, I conclude on this that the war is on, and the resistance side, the side fighting injustice, it is still determined. There is, although heavy casualties, have so many casualties with the Hamas and with the Palestinians in Gaza, so much has happened. Everybody's heart is bleeding, but the spirits are there, and the will to fight this and will to fight the injustice is absolutely there. And if you keep watching what Imam Khamenei says, you will, you will see that what I am saying is right, because he confirms it. He confirms it that they are in full spirits and they are determined to see it through.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saab. Musin Bhai, as Dr. Saab has mentioned, different aspects of this war and kind of bloodshed is going on. But how, obviously, it's the first time in history, maybe, that West or the arrogant powers are facing some kind of consequences of their actions. And it's a kind of very strong reaction with a will to fight against and that oppression and all sort of negativity they are trying to reflect through policies and whatever you say. So how do you see the part of Muslim world, Islamic world, and the remaining world? What difference do you see in these two worlds? Like Islamic states who are so-called Islamic states, and they are empowering the war in Gaza from the perspective of Israel. Like obviously they are letting them do so many things which can stop this war, or which can help people of Gaza, but they are not doing that. So who is doing what? I want you to like a little bit explain it, because there are so many heroes of our like in our among our people. Like people see Erdogan as hero, but is he actually a hero, or the role of Qatar, or a kind of role of Egypt and all these countries who are very close to Gaza, and what kind of role they are playing practically in strengthening this war?
So it's a very fascinating question, and I concur with Dr. Saab's analysis on the primary level, absolutely. And I think it is important to always get context of the grand reality, because you can't make sense of something if you just look at its kind of symptoms. And of course, when we began the conversation about the symptomatic impact of of Israel, of its war on Gaza and the war on the ground, those are all symptoms of that primary reality, which Dr. Saab has very, very eloquently made everybody aware. But I think there needs to be more awareness. Programs like this, for instance, we talk at a very, very sort of geopolitical level, and even to understand this geopolitics, you have to have a significant study, analysis, and view of the political spectrum in order to be able to come to a wise, insightful conclusion. Unfortunately, we suffer, not only in the Muslim world, but even in the Western world, largely human civilization suffers from political illiteracy, economic illiteracy, spiritual illiteracy, and possibly you could argue social and cultural literacy as well. That's because we're not rooted in the divine word. First of all, the grandest primary perspective is that we live in a world which is that created by the divine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and within that there is a place for all things, a place for prophets, a place for imams, a place for ordinary the waliullah, and a place for ordinary mankind, a place for arifs. Now I regard Imam Khamenei and most of the Shia scholarship that is in control in Iran as part of the wise, part of the insightful, those with basira, those with the correct perspective of the world view, and they understand the maqam, the station of all things, and therefore they are in a position to make decisions which are wise. They understand who is satanic, they understand who is Dajjal, who is with Dajjal, they understand the tactics and the strategies of those forces. Then there are the ordinary people. And the trouble with ordinary people is that, especially in our communities, they think they know it all without even necessarily studying, without even having that basira, without having anything to do with that wisdom. It's very easy for them to make political flippant remarks, and there are different grades of illiteracy that we have within our society, and there are different grades of arrogance and hubris that also make us unable to see who's telling the truth and who is telling a lie. Because our own radars, our own religious and spiritual radars are off the target. So therefore, they won't be able to see Ayatollah Khamenei or Ayatollah Sistani. They won't be able to see Ayatollah Khomeini in the light that, say, slightly wiser people see them. Because they've not understood the nature of those people or their maqam, and they don't understand the true perspective of where the world is. And of course, thankfully, we live in an age where the Islamic Republic of Iran has an entire order which revolves around such people, not just the ulama, but also the people in the military. The names I won't mention because they're going to be proscribed and I don't want to get the channel in trouble. But the bottom line is that there are people, a large number of people in wise position, with wisdom, in positions of power, and they understand what these games of the Anglo-Zionist empire are, and they are combating those slowly and steadily within the capacity they have. Their enemies, and now I'll come to the question that you were asking, their enemies are first and foremost, of course, those arrogant Anglo-Zionist powers which operate in the background and sometimes come front line, i.e. the Anglo-Zionist money mafia. But even more importantly, those forces don't come front line in a war with Israel because they fear now the technology and the science and the military power of Iran, which has emerged very rapidly for an infant nation, an infant revolution. The Islamic revolution is still very much in its infancy. And what they found is that they've lost on every battlefield, every hard power battlefield the Anglo-Zionist empire has engaged with against Iran. They've lost all of them. Every one of them. Their imposed war on Iran through Saddam, their proxy, their ISIS imposed Daesh invasion of West Asia. They've lost that war. They lost the war in Syria, where they wanted Assad completely out. Again, it was the axis of resistance led by Imam Khamenei which prevented them taking that over. They've lost the war in Yemen, where again the Saudis were used by the Americans and the Israelis as their proxies to implement whatever policy of genocide they wanted there. And now they've lost, of course, in Lebanon, where Hezbollah has for decades now resisted very successfully and defeated the Israelis on two occasions, 2000 and 2006. They defeated them in open warfare as well. Add to that now in the list Palestine and the rise of the Islamic resistance, you will see the crushing and the destruction of the Anglo-Zionist agendas there too. So what we can see is that, number one, the men of Basira lead this Islamic revolution and this resistance axis. Number two, those who gravitate towards them are people of insight and who also understand the real problems, and they are Sunni and Shia. Yemenis are not Shia. So the sectarian efforts of divide and rule, the nationalistic efforts of divide and rule of Arab and Ajam and Arab and Persian, which are there, the efforts to divide people in terms of neoliberal and Islamic culture, if you like, or belief systems. All of these tactics have been used. Ethnicities have been used. Kurd versus, Arab, Arab versus Persian, religious, divisions, Shia versus Sunni, Wahhabi versus Sunni. These are all divisions which have been stoked and used in the soft power war as well. And the soft power war is what I want to come to. These proxies that maintain the ignorance of the masses, Arabs, the Saudi Arabians and the Qataris and all of these guys are very much involved, for instance, in promoting religious illiteracy or religious malinformation, religious disinformation, in order to create conflict and fitna and to make the ordinary people fight each other internally, the Muslims particularly. They do it also through their own sources, through psyops and through political policies in the West. Here in the West, they do it in a different way to their own people. How's that? Well, they start bringing moral ambivalence. They start bringing in gender fluidity. They brought in sexual revolutions. They brought in division around identity politics. They brought in division around economic policies, beginning to downgrade the West in terms of its economic hegemony, which is enjoyed for many, many centuries. So they don't think that they're not undermining the West and its ordinary citizens. Here we're also getting a very particular kind of division and conflict and destruction going on, and control, and all of it is designed to maintain control over society. It's maintained to design the power structure to remain in the hands of the hierarchy of the Zionist money lender mafia, basically. And what Dr. Saab is talking about, I think, in terms of primary, this is also part of that primary reality. And of course, standing against that arrogance, that hubris, that moral, not just ambivalence, but immorality, the immoral kind of order, and the tyranny, and the rape, and the plunder of the world's resources by this very small number of people that control most things. What we see is the Islamic Republic of Iran is the only real credible force which has an alternative option. And people may think, okay, what about Russia? What about China? Well, they have their own agendas. The Chinese have their own totalitarian form of neo-capitalism or neoliberal capitalism emerging. The Russians are run by oligarchs and have the same oligarchs who are friends with the money mafia in the West, in Wall Street. If you go back in detail, the Bolshevik Revolution itself was implemented by the money from Wall Street and by the powers there. So there's a huge discussion about Russia and what its intentions are. And yes, Putin ostensibly is up against the West, and one has to give him some benefit of the doubt that he has an integrity and genuinely is standing for his people. But ultimately, in terms of West Asia, what is China and Russia's attitude towards West Asia, which is different from the Anglo-Zionist imperialist attitude that's existed for many decades? At the moment, it seems a benign one, but we've seen, for instance, some indications Russia has not stood against Israeli violations of sovereignty in Syria. It's not stood really solidly with the people of Iraq in terms of eradicating American control there. The Chinese certainly haven't done any of this. They've not openly come in and supported the oppressed in the way that you would expect any moral nation to do. Iran has. Iran does it not only because of its its own interests, and this is what the enemies try to say, oh, well, Iran is doing all of this because it's in their own interests, their economic interests and their geopolitical interests, that's why they're doing it. No, Iran has stated very clearly from day one, Ayatollah Khomeini had made it very clear that standing for the oppressed was an Islamic obligation. Creating an Islamic civilizational dream is a divine decree. It's a divine desire. It's a prophetic desire. So, these are the realities. The problem is the Muslims, because they are some of the most illiterate and the most kind of politically, I mean illiterate in a very positive in a positive framework. I don't mean to deride people. It's just a reality that they don't read politics and they don't read economics. If I ask them what NASDAQ is, most Muslims wouldn't be able to answer. If you ask them what on earth the infrastructure of the United Nations stands for, many of them won't know. They don't know the backgrounds because they've not done the study. So I would say that Islamic revolution has awakened I'd say a small minority of thinkers, intellectuals, ideologues, and people who are committed to a really new vision, a new world vision based on prophetic values and civilizational values. Alongside them is the beleaguered nation of Islamic Republic Iran, censored beyond all measure by the Americans, attacked from all sides, surrounded by military bases, nuclear weapons targeting every one of its cities. And amidst all that, Iran for over 40 years has stood tall and stands tall, and now has taken the fight into the backyard of the American imperialist forces. Israel is their main backyard. Saudi Arabia is their backyard. And I say to Muslims time and time again, the primary reality which Dr. Andrabi talks about is that Mecca and Medina is not yours. Your sacred cities, your sacred places have been long handed over to the Anglo-Zionist empire. It's Israelis and Americans that dictate the policies that go on in Zionist Saudi Arabia. It's the Americans and Israelis that run the Jordanian policies. It's the Americans and Israelis that run Sisi in Egypt. It's the American and Israelis that call the shots to the likes of Erdogan. So the bulk of the Muslim world is a slave to the Anglo-Zionist empire. And the resistance is the force that stands against it. What we're seeing with the Palestinian Gaza situation is the possible education, the next level of education for ordinary Muslims to understand this simple thing about geopolitics, that Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, stands for Islamic values, stands for the oppressed, is fighting an evil empire, Darth Vader. You might as well regard these people as allies of Darth Vader. If people want to come down to Hollywood basic understanding of good and bad, that's what people do. They go to the movies, Faizaji, and they see Star Wars. And in Star Wars, they'll watch and they'll always take the side of the resistance and the revolutionaries and the Jedi. And they'll support all those good guys who are fighting for ordinary people, and they will hate Darth Vader, and they'll hate all his kind of his forces and the evil that they stand for. Come out of the cinema, they can't see who is the evil empire. It is America. It is Britain. It is Israel. They can't necessarily see clearly at the level that certainly the axis of resistance sees, and that's our problem. And to solve that problem, we'll go into it later, but soft power is where we have failed I think big time. The hard power, I think they've been very successful, the Islamic Republic, but in soft power, we need to do far more to educate the illiteracy at a political, spiritual level in order for us to be able to create a world which is much better for the children. But the problem is the propaganda against Islam, the use of Daesh, the use of Saudi versions of Islam, the demonization of Islam, all stands against us in terms of making the Western public or even the Muslim public accept totally that real Islam, Ahlul Bayti Islam, is the version which actually is missing and which is the real solution for the world today and all of its problems.
Thank you so much, Mohsin bhai. Time is really running very fast, and there were so many questions I was supposed to ask. But Dr. Saab, I would ask you, how would you conclude the whole discussion? We are just left with like 8 minutes. So, how do you see the role of India in that war? Because we have seen the Indian army going there, and now recently we have seen Samriti Irani, who was like visiting Saudi as well. So how do you see this connection of India with Israel, and how do you connect that with Kashmir cause as well? So what are your concluding remarks on that, keeping the time in view? Sorry about the time, but that's the resistance we have.
Yes, I actually owe you one reply from your last question. As you had put a question, I did not answer that, and I talked about the primary and these levels, and that was good actually, because Mohsen picked it up, and he made the primary level, he widened it, and perhaps he gave it some more depth also, but he widened it. And in that connection, in the primary level connection, I will just say one thing, that it is at the level of understanding. It is basically when you understand things in their essence, when you understand things as they really are, not just the forms of things. And in
Well,
that,
sorry to cut you here, but generally, I'm really sorry to cut you, but the point is, people around in general, they don't want to look at the root causes. They just want to touch the symptoms and just want to talk about this. So this is
yes,
also a big, huge problem in our society, in overall, in general
yes,
public as well.
no, everywhere, not in our society only. Everywhere, people take a sort of things at face value. For example, Rajab Tayyip Erdogan saying some strong words, okay, but that's okay. I mean, we don't have an issue with that. But we should always bring up the primary, the basic level, because the truth is that if you look at Palestine, and if you deal with it, if you concern yourself with it, if you do something for it at the level of, say, national home, and Palestine should be free, if you keep it at that level, it won't go anywhere. It won't be. It will definitely not produce any final result, because the problem is rooted somewhere, and that's the truth. It is rooted somewhere, and unless you understand the whole picture, you can't. Uh, I mean, just by taking a superficial view, you can't be able to change things. But now coming to your first question, and then again, what you have asked me now about India and this. Let me let me let me try to say something in the uh, as briefly as I can uh, about the first question, that why these things, the things of injustice and all this has been happening, and what people are doing, what kind of world we are living in. this is really a very important question, and this is very important for our own education to to understand what is this world we are living in. I will tell you briefly something which is most basic in this, and which I will tell you, but I can't expand it as it should be. Uh, the current order, political, social order in which we are living, it is now we really call it modern. We are modern. It's a modern civilization. We are modern. Now, where did this modern civilization start? It started some 400-500 years back. The cornerstone, the basic pillar in this starting of this was, I think I told you some time back also, but it was basically it was not a Western uprising. It was not a Christian uprising. It was an ancient Greek and Roman, ancient pagan input that was called humanism, that gave rise to the modern civilization. And it's a detailed thing. I won't go into it, but just for you and for viewers, please pay attention to this one thing, that in this thought which triggered the modernization of the Europe, and by implication the whole world, because except Iran, we have not been able to produce an alternate civilization model. Something has started only 40 years back. Otherwise, the whole thing is, when we understand civilization, when we understand progress, whatever, it is what has been defined 400-500 years back. And the thought which formed the basis of these definitions, that what is progress, what is civilization. As I said, it was the ancient Greco-Roman thought. And the crux of this thought was that it gave supremacy to human being. Human being is the supreme in this universe. And just this was not a new thing. This was perfected. This was formed 100 years back before Jesus Christ. This thought in ancient Greece and Rome, and there it had some meaning, because they always looked at human beings in contrast to animals, and they thought that we are the best as compared to animals. And I must tell you that those teachings of those philosophers and humanists in those periods, in ancient Greece and Roman, they held high moral principles for human beings, in the sense that they said that human beings should be humane, not animal-like. They should be compassionate, not animal-like. They contrasted human with animal, and they said that humans are supreme. The same thought, it triggered the modernization of the current age, modernization of Europe. And here it was already after Jesus Christ. Here it was already the supremacy of God, not human. So when this thought was brought here, it essentially displaced God. It establishing supremacy of human being in a religious society, in a society where supremacy belongs to God, essentially means that you are essentially displacing God. Otherwise, in humans, in believing societies, supremacy is not an issue at all. It is one a mystic in India, whose small book I read when I was doing PhD. He used to be in the same city of India called Pune. It was called Pune at that time. His name is Sadhu Vaswani. Sadhu Vaswani had written a book, small book. He was impressed by Islam. He wrote a small book, but he remained Hindu. He was a sadhu. His they call it ashram. It is there in India, in Pune. He said, in Islam deals with it in a very straightforward way. When it says Allahu Akbar, the question of supremeness is decided. Allah is great. That's it. Now, then we have to decide between humans things, but the greatness, that is decided. Now, this lies at the heart of this civilization, that human beings are greatest. It has no transcendental dimension. Everything is within us. Everything is within human being, and by the day it is growing. All the enlightenment, all these neoliberalism, everything is to give human being complete supremacy. It is my civilization. It is even if you look at science, science is not a new thing. Science used to be there, and people used to engage with nature. What is moon? What is sun? What is happening? What is shadow? When we walk, there is shadow. They used to reflect on natural phenomenon. But in the modern age, we are not reflecting on natural phenomenon. We are trying to control nature. We are trying to get as much as we can for ourselves from nature. A selfish approach to nature. Selfishness lies at the heart of modern science also. So this is the world we are living in. And when we say whether we have advanced, whether we have made progress, you should, if I ask you, how about India? How about China? You will say, yes, China is growing at 7%. It is progress. Now,
Really sorry to cut you. Time is really up now.
Values.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you?
I'm really sorry. Time is up now, and we are 2 minutes fast. So really, thank you so much for joining me today. And as Dr. Saab has mentioned, so many important points we need to reflect on that. I'll take a leave now. Inshallah, we'll see you next week. Allah Hafiz.